or who want to review it again. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor, envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Gracias. Tonight, this evening session will focus on the opening of the new Felton Grove High School and other related recommendations in the western area of our district. As a reminder, today's session was prepared by the Office of Student Assignment, and the information we will review with you is a subset of the full presentation that was shared with the board during their work session on September 3rd. Again, I would like to remind you that this evening session will focus on the opening of the new Felton Grove High School and other related recommendations in the western area of our district. Otra vez, si necesita ayuda en español, por favor, envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Gracias. Okay, so before we begin, let me go over some logistics with you. Our session will last for no more than an hour and a half. We will begin our presentation and conclude by responding to questions from today's session. We recognize that now and throughout the session, you may have questions regarding the proposal or the recommended stability rules. To capture your questions, we will be using the Q&A feature within Google Meet. To access this feature from a computer, please click on the three shapes in the toolbar on your screen. If you are using a mobile device, select the three dots first, then select the icon with the three shapes. You should then see a Q&A feature identified by a question mark icon. To ensure your questions are anonymous, our host and moderators will be monitoring the Q&A, for questions and capturing them throughout this evening session. Once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, essentially that means your question has been successfully captured by our moderators and you do not need to resubmit that question. We will make every effort tonight to respond to your questions towards the end of our session. In addition, we will use your questions to update the FAQ portion of our website. And once again, si necesita ayuda en español, por favor, envíe un correo electrónico a studentassignment@wcpss.net y alguien se comunicará con usted mañana. Gracias. In addition, we are asking that you contribute to the larger community discussion related to this initial draft of the 2025-2026 school enrollment proposal via the Thought Exchange. The Thought Exchange will remain open through September 29th. After it is closed, we will summarize the feedback received through the Thought Exchange, and we will share this summary with the board during their work session on October 15th. Nobody will be personally identified in the summary. Before I turn things over to Susan in a few moments, I would like to remind you, yes, you guessed it, that the opening of the new Felton Grove High School and other related recommendations of the western area of our district will be discussed tonight. So by the end of tonight's session, you would have had the opportunity to, number one, review the assignment planning process. Number two, review recommendations included in the initial draft specific to your area of the district. Number three, share thoughts and ideas via the Thought Exchange for review and consideration by both staff and board members. And number four, and perhaps most importantly, share questions that you have that will help you gain a better understanding of the potential impacts of the proposed plan for your family. And without further ado, I would like to turn things over to Miss Susan Pulliam. Thank you.
Louis, thank you for that warm welcome. And everyone, again, we just can't thank you enough for joining us for today's session. And we hope that you'll find that it's informative, as well as we get to a lot of your questions and are able to address as many of those as possible this evening. So the current proposal for the 25-26 school enrollment plan was originally presented to the board on September 3rd, as was mentioned a few moments ago. That initial draft included recommendations specific for the 2025-2026 school year. This year's student assignment proposal focuses on the opening of 4 new schools: Bowling Road Elementary School, Pleasant Plains Elementary School, Rex Road Elementary School, and the focus for tonight's session, Felton Grove High School. Also, the proposal does include base assignment changes, calendar application changes, and other recommendations to help us not only relieve captain overcrowded schools, but also to help us fill underutilized schools. Many of these changes will allow students to attend a less crowded school and, in most cases, a shorter bus route. The proposal also includes recommendations for stability rules for families impacted by the recommendations in the current proposal. All of the information we will share during this evening's presentation, along with other tools and resources to help you better understand the recommendations included in this initial draft of the proposal, can be found on our district website. The enrollment proposal website is specifically designed to help you access information about the current draft of the proposal for the 2025-2026 school year, and it will be updated regularly throughout this process as new information and resources are available, including an updated FAQ section and video resources. The main assignment planning website that you see on the lower portion of the screen is a great resource for anyone interested in learning more about the complete process that we use to prepare for and develop the annual enrollment plans. We recognize that some of you may just now be joining us, and we'll want to remind everyone that we will be using the Q&A feature in the Google Meet to capture your questions today. So again, to access this feature from a computer, please click on the 3 shapes that you see in the toolbar on your screen. If you're using a mobile device, you'll want to click these 3 dots first and then the shapes. Ultimately, you're looking for that question mark for the Q&A feature. As a reminder, to ensure that your questions are anonymous, our host and moderators will be monitoring the Q&A throughout our session and capturing those questions throughout the session. Once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that lets you know that our moderators have seen it, captured it, and added it to our list of questions for later in tonight's session. You do not need to resubmit your question when you see that it's been removed. We will make every effort to respond to as many questions as we possibly can toward the end of the session. Also, we do want to continue to encourage you to participate in the ongoing thought exchange, which is a community discussion about the initial draft, and remind you that this will stay open through September 29th. We will share a summary of all of the results from the thought exchange with our board during their work session on October 15th. And although the questions that you submit tonight will not necessarily be a part of the public record, we will use those to help us with our FAQ portion of our website, as well as to address any issues that come up with our board during the October 15th work session. To ensure you have a better understanding of how this year's proposal was developed, we're going to just take a quick few minutes to briefly review our planning process. For those of you who've joined us for other sessions, this is a much more detailed conversation when we have our in-person sessions in the spring, but I just want to make sure everyone has the same footing and ground start point or foundation for the conversation, but I won't spend too much time on these slides. As a reminder, the policy that guides all of our enrollment planning development is Board Policy 4150. This policy directs staff to balance, to the extent possible or reasonable, the goals and factors identified by the 4 main pillars you see listed here, specifically student achievement, stability, proximity, operational efficiency. Each of these pillars do have specific definitions within Board Policy 4150. To assist you, we're going to take a moment and play a brief video. This has been updated, so those of you who've participated in presentations in recent past, this is a newer version of that video that more clearly explains these 4 pillars. So we'll just take a few moments to watch this video, and then I'll rejoin the session.
Understanding student assignment. It's no secret that our school district is growing, and it's growing fast. That means each year we need to address overcrowded schools and often need to open new schools to keep up with this growth. To state the obvious, we may have to reduce the enrollment at an existing school or fill new schools with students. This is done through the annual student assignment process. To best understand when and where new growth is coming in our district, we conduct an annual enrollment forecast. This forecast helps us look ahead up to 10 years and project enrollment growth throughout the district. This information helps us update our capital improvement plan and to make more informed decisions related to school assignments. Each year, some students are assigned to one of our new schools or reassigned to an existing school. This ensures we have balanced school populations across the district. We know families love their schools and that student assignment decisions can be worrisome. That's why we want to be completely transparent in how we make them. Our school board has established 4 pillars that guide each and every student assignment decision. Here's what they mean and how they work together.
Student achievement. We want all of our schools to provide the best academic opportunities for our students. This pillar compels us to think about whether a student assignment plan can help reduce high concentrations of poverty or low-performing students at some of our schools.
Stability. Essentially, we try to keep as many children at their current school through the exit grade as possible. When reassignments are necessary, we provide the opportunity for some students to submit a stability transfer request and stay at their current school through the exit grade. Operational efficiency. This pillar is about making sure all of our schools and transportation resources are at their best use. Overcrowded schools are a problem. Classrooms packed with too many students are one thing. But then there are the endless carpool lines, bathroom facilities that can't comfortably accommodate everyone, and having to start lunch when most people are still working on breakfast. On the flip side, having under-enrolled schools is an inefficient use of public resources, particularly when there are crowded schools nearby. Proximity. Okay, this one can be a little tricky. In a perfect world, houses would be built in neat little rows on a predictable timeline and at a slow and steady rate. As it is, we live in an imperfect world where lots and lots of homes pop up in one area, while growth is slight or non-existent in others. For this reason, it is impossible to send every child to their most proximate school unless we want some of our schools bursting at the seams while others are half empty. That said, this pillar states that we will send students to schools within a reasonable distance. Often, the difference between the most proximate school and the next most proximate school is no more than a couple of miles. Please remember that we must consider all 4 of these pillars when making assignment decisions. There is no priority among the 4 that applies in every situation. It's a balancing act that ultimately helps us come up with the best possible plan for everyone. Thank you for working with us to ensure our school system continues to serve all students well.
Susan, at this time, I'd like to welcome board member Ms. Mahaffey to the meeting. Welcome, Ms. Mahaffey.
Thank you. And I believe one of our senior leadership team members, Glenn Crosa, has joined us as well. All right, so hopefully that video helped you to get a better understanding of how our board and our board policy defines each of those 4 pillars. But now I just want to briefly walk you through some steps that we also follow in our planning process. So in addition to that guidance from the policy, we have sort of 6 main steps that we follow in our process. The first step is the presentation of the annual enrollment forecast. This forecast provides both 1- and 10-year projections for enrollment growth throughout the district. Even though the enrollment forecast provides a 10-year projection for enrollment in the district, it is updated annually to account for any changes in residential development patterns, home sales, birth rates, and other areas that impact this forecast. Simply knowing how many students the district needs to be prepared to serve is certainly helpful. However, knowing where within and throughout the district this growth is expected is particularly handy in developing our annual enrollment plans. This map depicts the projected change in total student population residing in various areas across the district. What you should notice is that this growth is not evenly distributed throughout the district and that some areas of the district are projected to stabilize and have minimal changes over time. However, I have highlighted for your convenience the area that we'll be discussing in today's session. Again, more information about these are posted to the website, so I just want to briefly go through this. In fact, there's a detailed video that really walks through each of the 6 steps if you're interested in watching that at a later time. The next step in our process is a review of the projected crowding for the next school year. In addition to providing a 10-year outlook, the annual forecast also provides, as I mentioned, a one-year projection. We use that to determine funding needs for the coming school year, as well as to predict crowding for the next school year. In this case, these projections that you're seeing were shared in March of 2024 and are for our current 24-25 school year. This is a quick look at the projected crowding for our elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the district based on this annual forecast. And again, I have highlighted the region that will be discussed in today's session for additional context. The third step in our planning process is a review of the Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP, including any adjustments that have been made during the annual review process for the CIP. Highlighted by the green circle is the general location of the new Woods Creek Elementary School that opened this past July. These orange circles show where throughout the county our new schools are projected to open for the 25-26 school year. And these darker gray circles highlight where the projected new schools in future years of the CIP are located. This chart shows the projected opening years for all approved new school projects in the 7-year CIP. Please note that although there are major renovation projects during the same time frame, they're not shown on this chart. They are accounted for during our annual enrollment planning process, however. I do want to pause and acknowledge the asterisk by each of the new and future school sites and remind you that all major projects in our district, both new schools and renovations, do have the potential for completion date changes based on market volatility, scope changes, and changes in designer construction schedules. Essentially, we're constantly monitoring the progress of all our construction projects and will adjust recommendations for the annual enrollment plan when needed. At this time, we're planning for the opening, as I mentioned at the beginning of our session, of Bowling Road Elementary, Pleasant Plains Elementary, Rex Road Elementary, and Felton Grove High School in the 2025-26 school year. In addition, we are taking into account that Baucom Elementary and Fuquay-Varina Middle have moved into their newly renovated campuses with expanded capacity this year. So there's recommendations for both of these schools included in the initial draft proposal as well. During today's session, we will specifically review the recommendations for the new Felton Grove High School, along with other recommendations in this area that are related to the opening of this school. Once the forecast, projected crowding, and CIP updates have been reviewed, we're ready to begin step 4 of our process, which is the preparation of the annual enrollment plan. The first step of this process is to initiate public engagement activities to capture thoughts and ideas from families and community members to help them give us information that will inform the development of the next enrollment plan. For this year's plan, these sessions were held between March and May. For a complete summary of the thoughts and ideas captured from families and community members during this year's public engagement process in the spring, please visit our assignment planning website. That's the one on the lower part of the screen. Overall, we had an increase of about 75% for participants attending our in-person sessions and joining our virtual sessions this spring as compared to the sessions that we hosted in 2023. And you can see the participation information for the session specific to your area highlighted in green. Participants at these sessions were presented with 2 core questions to generate discussion and ideas. Specifically, participants were asked to share what they thought district leadership should be aware of and take into consideration when opening a new school in their community, and in general, managing enrollment growth and school crowding. As you can see, many thoughts and ideas were generated and captured during these sessions, and we've taken these ideas and concerns into consideration throughout the planning process. Again, I won't stop and read all of these. These are all posted to our website. If you're interested in reading more about them, please visit our assignment planning website. Here are a few more of those key takeaways from these sessions. And again, one more time, those full summaries are available on our assignment planning website. In addition to those live or in-person sessions, we hosted several different thought exchanges so that we could increase access for families and community members to this important discussion. Overall, we had an increase in thoughts submitted of 275% compared to some of our exchanges that we hosted in 2023. You can see the participation information for the exchange specific to your area highlighted in green. And here is a sample of the results from the thought exchange specific to your area. Again, for a full summary of all of this information, please visit our assignment planning website.
And Susan, give me a moment to interrupt. I
Sure.
apologize. We just want to remind everyone to continue to post questions and to give feedback to the thought exchange. We are looking forward to answering your questions tonight. So please actively do that while the presentation is going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that reminder. And in just a moment, I'll show you a screen that has a reminder about how to do that in case you joined us a little bit late. We're often asked then, what do we do with all of this information that we gather during these public engagement sessions in the spring? And so here are a few of examples of how we extend this work. First, we'll start reviewing and assessing that information gathered to determine if any topics require more detailed exploration. This year, we did identify a key question related to calendar alignment and invited those who volunteered to participate in focus groups to participate in an AI-supported interview process that was sort of like a focus group. These were recently concluded, and we're still analyzing the results, and we'll share those findings with the board in a future work session. We also will consider how we develop stability rules that provide families with as much stability as possible while allowing our new schools to open and for our schools to operate effectively. And then, of course, you see there towards the bottom, we'll be considering cohort and calendar continuity concerns very specifically based on the feedback that we've received over the last couple of years when we develop these final recommendations. So again, those are just a few examples of how we use the work or how we work to incorporate the information and feedback we receive from families and community members during our public engagement sessions as we develop those initial draft recommendations. The next step in our enrollment planning process is to visit with the board and have a clarifying discussion to determine what all should be included in that year's particular plan. So for this year, we had that conversation in May with our board. So in addition to developing the attendance areas for the new schools, the board asked us to address crowding and cap schools where possible, as well as to address other important school choice options for the district. The board did ask that we continue the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, as well as working toward improving our operational and transportation efficiency as a district. And now we're to step 3 or part 3 of step 4. There's a lot of numbers that are duplicated here. But at this stage of the process, we're ready to share initial draft recommendations with the board and the community for review and consideration. Before we dive into the recommendations for this year's plan, I do want to acknowledge that there's 2 steps that follow after the board approves a plan. So once the board approved the last plan, the 24-25 enrollment plan, the one that helped us fill Woods Creek Elementary, they then start to look at, they've asked staff to look at, they ask us to start looking at which schools are still facing overcrowding concerns, specifically looking at our capping recommendations. And so that conversation was had with the board in February, and you can see the names of the schools in your area that are currently capped highlighted in green. As you can see, quite a few. You're in a very high growth area. Here then on this slide for step 6, you're seeing the last step in the planning process, reviewing options to address other school utilization concerns. So in particular, part 3 of this step happened this year, where a review of the schools operating on a year-round calendar that did not have long-term crowding concerns resulted in the board approving calendar changes for 2 of our middle schools for the 25-26 school year. These are not in your region. However, we wanted you to be aware of how this step sort of leads into the beginning of the next cycle. So the information that's included in these last 2 slides of step 5 and 6 were helpful in guiding us as we were developing the 25-26 plan. And then you can look forward to these steps occurring once the 25-26 plan is approved. These steps will sort of follow on afterwards. So it's a continuous cycle of planning to help the district utilize its resources most effectively. Again, as a reminder, all of the information related to that 6-step process can be found on the assignment planning website, and all the information about the current draft of the proposal can be found on the 2025 enrollment proposal site. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us and you'd like to post a question, please use the information here at the lower portion of your screen to post those questions. If you're using a computer, you're going to look for these 3 shapes on your toolbar, and then you'll look for that question mark. If you're using a mobile device, you'll start by looking for these 3 dots, then look for those 3 shapes, and then post your question. Finally, as a last time I'll say this, all of your questions are going to be captured anonymously. So once you see that your question has been removed from the Q&A, that lets you know that our moderators have captured the question and added it to the questions list, and we'll be able to address those toward the end of our session today. And then again, our thought exchange is still open and ongoing. It'll be open through September 29th. This is the official place where you can share information, thoughts, ideas, concerns, suggestions related to the initial draft that are available to not only the community for rating and review, but also to all of our board members. All right. So what we're hoping is that you'll see that the following recommendations do take into account the information that we shared in the review and update section, including the guidance that's provided by Board Policy 4150, the input and feedback that we gathered from families and community members over the last couple of years, the need to address our capped and overcrowded schools while being mindful of future school openings, the need to continue to the district's efforts to reduce high concentrations of poverty and promote integration and diversity, as well as the need to support improvements in both operational and transportation efficiency. In summary, for the 25-26 enrollment plan, we have completed steps 1 through 3, and we're right now in the middle of 4, and we'll initiate steps 5 and 6 after the board approves a final plan later in November. So we'll start with an overview of the base assignment changes recommended in this draft by grade span. So here you're seeing the recommendation impacts for base assignment changes at the elementary level. I'd like to call attention to the fact that the majority of the recommendations are in this portion of the county because this is where 3 new schools are opening up, as well as Bauckham Elementary's new expanded capacity is being made available. The vast majority of the county is not impacted by base assignment recommendations. And so again, the vast majority of the recommendations that are included in this year's plan are related to the opening of those 3 new elementary schools. At the middle school level, very minimal impacts throughout the district. Again, the only major impact that you're seeing here in the lower portion of the screen is related to the opening of one of the elementary schools to align feeder patterns. The rest are just small adjustments to help the district have more operational and transportation efficiency. And then at the high school level, what's bringing us together today, again, the vast majority of recommendations in this year's plan are related to the opening of Felton Grove High School and the cascading or domino impacts as the result of that school opening. So let's dive in. Before we jump into the specific recommendations, which I have a feeling most of you have had a chance to review based on the kinds of questions that I'm seeing come in, I do want to start with the stability rules specific to this region, because I think this is what's really most helpful. I think a lot of you've had a chance to review these, but it's really good to sort of talk through them. So because this area is being impacted by the opening of a new high school, at present, the district opens new high schools with 9th and 10th grade. And I would like to pause and recognize that that is also an adjustment from previous years. There was a time when we opened new high schools that we opened them with 9th, 10th, and 11th grades, and all students in those 3 grade levels would be assigned to the new high school. Over the years, wisdom has prevailed, and adjustments based on community feedback and stability for students have changed that practice to where now we open schools with just 9th and 10th grade. We have explored the option of opening with 9th grade. We're just very concerned about the ability to offer appropriate academic offerings and extracurricular offerings for students with that low of a student enrollment. So at this time, we're still recommending opening Felton Grove High School with both 9th and 10th grade in its first year. And then of course it will add 11th grade in the second year, 12th grade in the third year, and then it'll be a fully functioning 4-grade school at that point in time. So since only 9th and 10th grade students will be assigned to the new school, any students in the 11th or 12th grade that are in the area being projected to be impacted, they will not actually have an assignment change. They will remain assigned to their current school with their current level of transportation. So the stability rule that we recommended with the initial draft was that if any of those rising 11th or 12th grade students for the 25-26 school year had younger siblings that would be entering high school or continuing in high school, so rising 9th or rising 10th grade students, those students would be eligible under the stability rules to stay at that school with their older sibling through the end of 12th grade. They would not have to be reassigned. Once their older students aged out, they could stay through the end of 12th grade. The challenge here at the high school level for transportation is it's a little bit more nuanced. At the other levels, all stability transfers come with no transportation because any routes that were going into those neighborhoods would be redirected to the new school that's being opened or the new school that's being assigned. In this case, since routes will still be in existence for those 11th and 12th grade students, there is a potential that those rising in 9th and 10th grade siblings of the older students would still be eligible for transportation for a year or 2, depending on how long their older sibling used that transportation. So we'll work on those individually with families as we get closer to that time period. So there is a slight time period of overlap where those younger siblings could take advantage of the transportation that's provided to their older siblings for that 1 or 2 year period, but it would slowly phase out to where the transportation would no longer be provided over time. So that's the only thing that makes high school stability transfers a little bit different. We have received a lot of requests asking us to consider allowing rising 10th graders who don't have older siblings the ability to remain assigned to their current school for continuity and stability. We're assessing that request. At this time, I don't feel that a full carte blanche recommendation would come from staff for all rising 10th graders, but we are assessing it to see what the practicality of that is. And we'll provide a full update at the October 15th session with the board. I do want to highlight that stability transfers are not automatic because we do want to make sure that families understand transportation impacts. So we do ask that you officially submit a request for that stability transfer. We also recognize that in some cases, there might be siblings that would prefer to go to different schools. So we don't want to make any assumptions on behalf of your family, and we want to make sure you have that ability to make that choice. So once everything is ironed out, and if we find out that your family is directly impacted, we'll send you some communication so that you know precisely how to do that, and it'll happen after the board approves the plan late November, early December. Because there are some cascading impacts, there are some recommendations for students at Apex Friendship High School to be assigned to Apex High School. And then other parts of the district, there's some other high school recommendations being made. In that case, since those recommendations are from an existing high school to an existing high school where there's already a student population, there's already a staff complement at the school, we are recommending slightly more generous stability rules for those situations. So in those situations, we're recommending that any grade student be allowed to continue at their current school as long as they can provide their own transportation. As a reminder, we're using the Q&A feature to capture your questions, so we won't be taking any oral questions because, again, we just want to make sure we're maintaining your confidentiality and anonymity throughout this process. Because we're going to talk briefly about a couple of middle school assignment changes, I also want to address those. In this plan, every single middle school recommendation that we have is related to a shift from one school to another. No new middle schools are opening up in this plan. We recognize that Fuquay-Varina Middle has moved to a new location, but it's not a new school. It has an existing population of students. It has existing staff. So we're recommending the most generous stability rules for middle school changes as well. So any student rising into 7th or 8th grade that would like to remain at their current school, if they are impacted by assignment changes, they would be eligible to request that stability transfer and stay as long as they can provide their own transportation. More details on this, and we're going to continuously update our FAQs, particularly in response to some of the questions we're receiving from you tonight. So we continue to encourage you to visit either or both of these websites throughout the process so that as those questions come up, you can seek those answers there. And again, for those of you that may just now be joining us, we're using the Q&A feature of Google Meet to submit your questions. So please just use that feature, post your question. When you see that it's been removed, that lets you know that our moderators have captured it, and we'll address it when I get to the end of the session. So here we are, Felton Grove High School. Our brand new high school is opening in the southern part of our district. As a reminder, it's located roughly here. It's sort of between Apex, Southwest Raleigh, Holly Springs. It's kind of in a little tri-corner area. The schools recommended to open on a traditional calendar, as the majority of our high schools operate on that calendar, with a capacity of 2,200 students. Because it will only open with 9th and 10th grade, the first year we do expect its capacity to be essentially 1,100 or 1,100. We do recommend some areas of the existing Apex High School, Apex Friendship High School, and Holly Springs High School base attendance areas become part of the new Felton Grove base attendance area. What you're seeing here with the table with the blue header is if we were to make no changes in the assignment plan, this is the projected crowding for these three schools over the next couple of years. So for 25, 26, Apex High School, by reading this chart, would be potentially at 108% crowding. Apex Friendship High School, one of our capped schools that has a feeder pattern cap, would be at 119% crowding and growing over time. And then Holly Springs High School obviously being over 100% as well. So again, you're keenly aware that you're in an area with some crowding and some growth, and we're trying to take advantage of the new Felton Grove High School to address some of those concerns. What you see here then, and I think some of you probably had a chance to review this before, is that the map on the left side, so this map on this side, shows with the colors that you see here what the current base attendance area of the school is. So the purple area represents the current Apex Friendship High School base attendance area. The green area on this side of the map represents the current Apex High School base attendance area, and the pink on the lower portion of the map represents the current Holly Springs High School base attendance area. The hashed areas that you see kind of highlighted by this circle represent the areas that we're projecting to be impacted by the opening of Felton Grove High School. So that you see the resulting map on this side shows that Felton Grove High School's current version of the base attendance area that's being recommended is the area that's highlighted in yellow, which takes a portion of Apex, a portion of Apex Friendship, both of which that are below US 1. And then the pink area represents Holly Springs, this little portion right here, and as well as a little bit of this would become part of the Felton Grove base attendance area under the current recommendations, but we're still taking feedback. And if any adjustments are necessary, we'll make those recommendations at the October meeting. So that's how you read the map. Just again, to remind you where you are, this roadway is US 64, this is US 1, this is 540, and then this is that 55 or GB Alford highway. So just to kind of make sure you know where you are in the county. In addition, because we're going to be able to relieve Apex High School with some of this area that's below US 1, there is a portion of the attendance area for Apex Friendship High School that currently goes from Apex Elementary to Apex Middle and then over to Apex Friendship High School. And many members of the community in this area have asked if they could be aligned and be Apex, Apex, Apex. And so that makes sense for us at this point now that some space has been made available because of this current set of recommendations. So here you're seeing that we're recommending taking this portion of the Apex Friendship High School attendance area and bringing it in as part of Apex High School's base attendance area. Again, since this one represents a movement from an existing high school to an existing high school, any students in these areas, if the plan were approved as it sits today, any students at any grade who are already attending Apex Friendship would be able to put in a stability transfer and stay. And then slowly over time, the neighborhood would start to attend Apex High School. However, for the portions on the map that we looked at before, these areas in the yellow, because they are going into the new high school, all rising 9th and 10th graders who don't have an older sibling would be expected to attend the new high school initially. What you see here and what this orange label lets you know is this is sort of the after effect. So this is the projected change in enrollment for all 4 schools over time, or at least over the next couple of years, based on this current set of recommendations. And again, these are projected. It's going to be really dependent on how many families truly accept or take advantage of stability transfers. Some things like that will change these numbers over time. But what you'll see is this does show that Apex High School would still remain a little bit crowded for another year or so while some of that population is aging forward. Apex Friendship High School would have a decent amount of relief, but again, this is dependent on nobody taking stability transfers, and we do believe that lots of families would want to take advantage of that who are eligible. But that would certainly give it space to address the growth that's coming to the west of its campus. Holly Springs High School would also be able to have a little bit more room for all of the growth that's coming in the remaining portion of its base attendance area over time. What you're seeing here is just a 2-year outlook, 25, 26, and 26, 27. But as I showed you in that initial projected growth map, these areas are all expected to have high rates of growth over the next 10 years. So this really does put us in a good position to absorb all of that growth that's coming up through 2033, 34 at least. And then Felton Grove would start a little under 50%, which is to be expected for a new high school, and then, rapidly grow as that junior class gets added on and the senior class gets added on, and some of those high growth areas that are assigned to the school start to develop as well. So again, the projected capacity differences you're seeing here are really looking at just 9th and 10th grade. And then here, this would be 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And so that's why you're seeing that sort of gradual impact over time. Other related recommendations in this area, we're getting super close to being able to take your questions, are related to some middle school adjustments. At this time, this area right here is the only area that's going to Apex Friendship Middle that's not also going to, let's say, to Apex Friendship High on this side of US 1. So again, this is 64, this is US 1, this is 540, and this is 55. So that's a carryover from different adjustments that have been happening over the last couple of years. So to align the cohort and feeder pattern for this community, as well as to give them some transportation efficiency, there is a recommendation that they become part of the Apex Middle School base attendance area. Again, because these are existing schools to existing schools at the middle school level, all students who are already attending Apex Friendship Middle, if they'd like to provide their own transportation and stay, could. Otherwise, the students would be more than welcome to start attending Apex Middle with transportation. What you're seeing here is both the before and after, and as you can see, it's not a significant number of students impacted, but it does relieve Apex Friendship Middle just a little bit, which is also one of our CAP schools in the region, and it takes advantage of some of that capacity that's available at Apex Middle. You'll notice that there's an asterisk here, and that just means that Apex Middle is being proposed to be impacted by more than one change, and this number that you see here is the sum total of all of those impacts. And then the next set of middle school recommendations that we have are related to Lufkin, Apex, and Holly Ridge Middle. Most of these are what we would refer to on my side of the house as a technical correction. This area that you're seeing here is part of the Woods Creek Elementary base attendance area. And when we made the assignment recommendations last year, the intent was for all of Woods Creek Elementary students to move forward into Lufkin Road Middle, since they're both multi-track year-round schools. And as this year progressed, we realized that this was the only piece that didn't make it over to Lufkin Road Middle. It's a small number of students, but we certainly want those students to be able to move forward with their cohort from Woods Creek Elementary to Lufkin Road Middle. And so that's why that recommendation is being made. And then down here on the southern part of the map, you're seeing a couple of areas that are highlighted in blue. Once upon a time, Holly Springs Elementary had a split feeder. Some students went to Lufkin and some students went to Holly Ridge Middle. With the opening of Woods Creek Elementary, all of the remaining attendance area for Holly Springs Elementary, with the exception of this little area, does go to Holly Ridge Middle now. So to ensure that the students would have a continuous cohort and feeder pattern, we're recommending that this area be assigned into Holly Ridge Middle. Currently, this is not a residential area, but if there were zoning changes in the future, this would allow any of those students, if they did live in that area, to move forward. So basically, it doesn't impact any students this year, but it sets the stage that if there were zoning changes, students that would live in this area would go with their cohort onto Holly Ridge Middle. And again, you can see the before and afters here. So this is if we made no changes, and this is with the recommendations included. And again, that asterisk lets you know that Apex Middle showed up on both of those sets of recommendations. And this shows that summary total of impacts from both sets of changes. So that's what we've got to present here, because I know you're going to have a lot of questions. So we wanted to keep this part of the presentation as short as possible. So what we want to do here now is just give you a quick review of what's happening next in the timeline, and then we'll jump into your questions. So right now we're here where we're presenting information to the public. We're gathering feedback from the community, not only through the thought exchange, but through sessions like this. In addition, we're going to have an in-person session on September 24th. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. After this period ends, we'll summarize all of the feedback that we've received, review all of the plans, and see if any adjustments need to be made. And we'll come back and visit with the board on October 15th during a work session. During that work session, we will share all of the feedback that we've received. We'll respond to a lot of that feedback. So hopefully you'll hear the same responses there that you're hearing here tonight. In addition, if there are any adjustments recommended, we'll review those at that time as well. Then we'll open up for a final round of public engagement, and then get prepared for the board to take its final actions. We just want to let you know that since the meeting on September 3rd, the board has identified November 12th as the time and date for their public hearing. They're going to do it during a regular board meeting. So look out for information on that. That is the specific opportunity to address the board in a public forum, in a very formal forum, to be able to share your thoughts, ideas, concerns with the board. On November 26th, they have now adjusted that approval date. Originally, we were proposing November 12th, but we've now adjusted that to November 26th. So those two dates are new for those of you that were watching the presentation on September 3rd. And we have tried to update all of our resources and information. So if you happen to see an area where it still has old dates, please let us know so that we can make those adjustments and updates quickly. And then the next thing that we've got, I wanted to share with you where we are in terms of the public engagement. So this is us today. We've got a couple more sessions that are going to follow on in the next couple of weeks, but I did want to highlight the September 24th session. And the reason I want to highlight that for this group in particular is we know you're going to have a lot of questions about academics, athletics, extracurricular activities, anything that's really specific to the high school experience, how we're going to select the principal, when we're going to select the principal, what's the mascot, what's the colors, those kinds of questions that are really practical for families that are thinking, okay, as my student's getting ready to transition, I really need some help in better understanding what the district's going to do to support my student in transitioning to this new school. We're going to have staff from all of those departments available at the session on September 24th. It'll be hosted at Herbert Akins Road Middle School. More information is going to continuously be sent to you through our normal communication channels, but we're also going to have information on our website as well. So we do encourage you to attend. I just want to remind everybody, it's not a public hearing. It's not an opportunity to address individual board members. That's not the intent of it. The intent of it is to be an open house, floating format. We'll have lots of service providers from special education to transportation to safety and security, because I know there's a lot of questions about safety and security. So we'll have all of those departments available in addition to academics and athletics and so forth, so that you can get those types of very specific questions answered right from the people who are going to be making those decisions. And if you've got questions or concerns that you want to make sure they're aware of as they're opening a new school, that's a great opportunity to share that information. So it's really a staff information session. Once we conclude that session, we'll start gathering all the thoughts and feedback. Our thought exchange will close on September 20th, and we'll get prepared for that presentation in October. And with that, I just remind you, please continue to visit both of these websites regularly and often, because they will continuously be updated as more information is made available. And I think I'm going to take a drink of water and let Lewis give us some final instructions before we get to the Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Susan, for welcoming me back. And thank you for those who have stayed with us. We know we've shared a lot of information, and we would like to take this opportunity to address as many of your questions as possible. So please, if you haven't done so already, take a few minutes and post any questions using the Q&A feature. And as you're posting those questions, we will begin by reviewing those questions that have already been submitted. And we'll start with those. So Susan, I'm going to pull up the questions, and we're going to start asking you some of these questions. We have some good ones here.
All right. I took a drink of water. I think I'm ready.
Okay, Susan, will there be a stability transfer option for students to stay in a current career academy? For example, AOIT at Apex High School or AOE at Apex Friendship High School?
Great question. The Apex Friendship to Apex High School question is going to be a little easier for the students who are, let's say, in the Academy, I think it's of Engineering at Apex Friendship High School, that are recommended to be assigned to Apex High School. They're part of that existing to existing, so all students in all grade levels would be eligible for a stability transfer there. Specific to the students at Apex High School projected to go to Felton Grove, or Apex Friendship High School projected to go to Felton Grove, we've been hearing this question quite a lot, especially for those rising 10th graders that are just 1 year into their program. So we are assessing and evaluating those two specific programs to see if we can make adjustments to the stability rules. So I'd say keep an eye out for October 15th. The current recommendations would not include a provision for those students, so we are looking to see if we can modify the stability transfer recommendations to include those students. We felt like that was really good feedback from families and community members that we should be working with the board to see if we can accommodate some of those students, knowing that you can't really backfill those seats once a student leaves. So we're working on it. It's a work in progress is the short answer.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Next question. If our child is currently a freshman or sophomore, and we do not have an older sibling at our current high school, will they be able to submit a transfer request in the spring to stay at our current school? As the
short answer is sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and they're just describing the proposed stability rules that only allow for siblings to remain at their current school, at their current high school if they have siblings, excuse me.
Sure. So this question's highlighting a very important distinction. There are two transfer periods that our district operates. The one that we operate in the fall, so usually November, December timeframe, is specifically to capture those that the board has deemed eligible for a stability transfer based on that particular plan. And I'm not sure that I reiterated that enough during the presentation. For each enrollment plan, the board will identify and approve specific stability rules for that plan based on the uniqueness of that year's plan that we can go ahead and put into place right away so families can have that assurance, that they know what's happening. Once those are pushed through. Then we talk about our magnet application period. You're certainly welcome to participate in all of that. But then the general or official transfer window that now is opening up, it's usually the first couple of weeks in March now. Over the last couple of years, we've shifted it to the first couple of weeks of March. Any family is absolutely eligible under state law and board policy to put in a request for transfer based on your unique hardship concerns during that time period. I will caution you to be prepared that if it's related to a recent assignment change and the student's not eligible under the stability rules, our staff is most likely going to have to deny the request unless there's something specific, like you're a teacher at the school and you're trying to get your student at the same school where you teach. There's some nuance there. But for the most part, if it's specifically asking for a transfer that goes against the plan, our staff's probably going to have to deny it, but you are eligible to appeal that to the board and share your specific unique circumstances so that they can determine whether or not they can approve it as a board. So the short answer is yes, every family can always put in a request for transfer during the general or official transfer window. Just know that those rules are going to be put into place. So from a staff perspective, you still might need to go through a couple of steps.
Okay. Thank you, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
So folks, we know there's a lot of energy around this question. So Susan, I'm going to ask you about 10th graders. We're getting a lot of questions about 10th graders
Sure.
and just the reason why it would be important for them to stay. So have we considered the impact on rising 10th graders in our stability policy for Felton Grove?
The short answer is absolutely. Of course we have. And I really encourage those of you that have very specific questions about the 10th graders to keep an eye on our website. We've been working with our academics division as well as our area superintendents, because as I mentioned, for those of you who joined us super early on in today's session, we used to open schools with 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. So the 9th and 10th is already a reversion from original practices. So we have sort of made the decision that we're going to open a school half full with just 9th and 10th graders and allow it to grow forward. The concerns we have so far as a district about only opening with 9th grade or allowing lots of 10th graders the ability to do a stability transfer is that reduced enrollment will really negatively impact the ability of the school to fully offer an appropriate amount of academic, extracurricular, athletic, all of the things that make high school high school. It would really restrict the ability of the school to have a high quality educational and extracurricular experience for students. We are continuing to have conversations with our team to get you really robust responses to that question, because I realize my answer is a little bit generic. So please continue to watch our website. We're going to really get a very detailed response for you to that question. And of course, determine whether or not any other recommendations can be made for stability transfers that might allow some 10th graders to stay. I am not hopeful that will happen. I want to be honest with you, because I do know that we need a certain number of students at those schools to offer the honors level courses, the initial AP level courses, to be able to offer the extracurricular activities and the courses like chorus and band that you're looking forward to in a school. So we do have to be cautious from an operational standpoint about making sure that there are a sufficient number of students in the high school to offer high quality programming.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Susan, when does the stability transfer window open and close, and how will we communicate that?
Perfect. I can't tell you when it's going to open and close just yet, because as I mentioned, we've recently got an update from the board that they're going to do a final approval on November 26th, when in my mind I was planning for November 12th, which is fine. So basically what has to happen is once the board approves the plan on the 26th, we need a good 2 or 3 business days to work with our information systems team to get everything updated so that we can appropriately flag and identify all the students that are eligible for stability. So it will most likely be sometime during the first week of December. And what we'll do is when we get closer to October 15th, we should have a better idea of what that timeline is going to specifically look like. Because I just met with my technology team this morning to say, hey, how fast can we turn this around? So the goal would be to get that information ready for the first week of December. So as soon as we have pinned down dates, we will share them. Separately, we will identify each and every individual student that's eligible for a stability transfer and communicate with you through whatever methods you've got associated with the district. So your email or your text, whatever it is that you have online. We will also share it with your school principals so that they're aware and they can push that messaging too. So just in case we miss you on one side, we'll catch you on the other. And you are also more than welcome to ask us for the instructions if you feel like somehow you've missed the message. But we'll be communicating that with you. And then throughout the window, I try to keep it open for at least 2 weeks or 10 business days. So what we'll try to do is message you a couple of times during that process to say, oh, hey, we've noticed you haven't put in your request yet. If you were planning to do so, please put it in. And we'll share that same information with principals as well. So we're going to do a dual-pronged approach to directly message you through whatever method you've got signed up. So if you want to check with the school, make sure your email address and your text messaging settings are correct. That would be a great idea to do between now and the end of November. In addition, we'll be messaging your principals so that they can message you as well. So we're going to do that dual-pronged approach.
Thank you, Susan. Susan, if my student meets the stability rules, do they absolutely get to stay, or is there a limit of who and how many will get approved, even if they meet all of the stability rules?
Thank you for that question, because I realize we've got a CAP school that's involved here, one that even has a feeder pattern CAP. If your student qualifies under the stability rules and you put the request in during the stability window, so that December timeframe, when we send those messages out, they are guaranteed to be seated regardless of the crowding at the school that they're coming from. The only asterisk is if you don't put it in that window and you wait till the regular transfer window, I can't guarantee it at that point in time, because if the school is actively capping, we have to think about that. So what I always advise my high school parents in particular to do is to go ahead and put those requests in during the stability window. If you're not sure you're going to have carpool figured out, that kind of thing, go ahead and put it in so you can get that guaranteed seat, because you easily during the request window in March can ask for back to base if you're like, oh gosh, we've realized all of your friends are going to the new school, or we can't make carpool work, or gosh, the best friend or your favorite teacher, whatever it is going to be going to the new school. So in March, you can always ask for back to base and we can approve that, no questions asked. But in March, I can't give you a late stability transfer always. If the school's too crowded to accommodate you, we're not going to be able to say yes to those. So yes, if your student meets all the eligibility requirements and you put your request in during the stability window, which again will be that time in December, yes, they'll get it. No questions asked, no limits. We're good to go. So I tried to do the long and the short answer.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes.
Will there be an appeal process if you feel your child would be best served at their current school?
Okay, so I think this is similar to a previous question, but I just want to make sure I've got it right, Lewis. So maybe I'm a rising 10th grader and I'm not eligible, or I'm a rising 9th grader and I'm not eligible because I don't have an older sibling at the school, but I really, really would like to go to the school I was originally assigned to.
I believe so. Is there
okay.
something outside the stability?
Sure. Okay. So obviously those students wouldn't be flagged for stability, so they won't get the notifications in December. They won't be eligible to put the request in December. Every family in the district, for your own individual and personal reasons based on state law and board policy, is eligible to put in a request during our official transfer window. And again, for us, the dates are posted to our website, but it's the first couple of weeks of March. When you put your request in during that period, if staff is unable to approve it because it doesn't meet policy requirements, for example, you're asking to undo a recent reassignment plan, then you are absolutely eligible to appeal that decision to the board and share your individual and unique circumstances as to why yours is a little bit different and maybe outside normal policy. So yes, you always have that ability. I don't want to give false hope. The district does have to maintain operational efficiency, but if there is something very unique and very special about your situation, that there's a hardship that the board would see, they would have the right to overturn the staff recommendation and approve if the appeal was successful. So the short answer is yes, you would have the ability to put in the transfer and request an appeal.
Thank you, Susan. And Susan, can you just briefly clarify what the stability rules are?
Oh, sure. So I'm going to, pardon me for just a moment while I go find the slide. Okay. For those of you that have students in the area that is currently assigned to either Apex High, Apex Friendship High, or Holly Springs High, that is part of the recommendations to go to Felton Grove, this would be your set of recommendations, your set of stability rules as they're currently drafted. And I'll go back to one of the ones we've talked about earlier. Because 11th and 12th grade students won't actually have a change in school assignment, if they have younger siblings that are rising into 9th or 10th grade and would like to join them at their existing school. So I'll use Apex Friendship as an example. I have a rising junior assigned to Apex Friendship High School, they'll remain assigned to Apex Friendship High School because we're not going to offer 11th grade classes at Felton Grove. And there's a rising 9th grade student who's currently in 8th grade somewhere who wanted to go to school with their older sibling, and I want my students on the same campus. That student would receive, you as a family would receive the notification that that student is eligible, even though you're being projected to be assigned to Felton Grove. And you can put in that request in December, and then that student would be eligible to stay. We talked about this for those of you that were here with us when we went over this slide or this information, is because it's a high school and because the 11th and 12th grade students aren't actually being reassigned, there will be some level of bus service that's still available to these 11th and 12th grade students. Whatever they have today, they would keep that. So that rising 9th grade sibling that I just used in my example would be eligible to ride the bus with that rising 11th grade student as long as that student, had bus service. So, and I say it that way because if you've declined bus service and there's no stop in your neighborhood, we wouldn't necessarily add a stop. But if they just want to ride the bus with their older sibling, that's going to be easy to take care of. Once that rising junior for next year goes on to be a senior and then goes on to the next stage of life, high school, college, post-secondary plans, then the bus service would expire. And so you would need to come up with transportation for those last couple of years in this particular example that I just gave. So that's the stability rules here. For those of you that have students that are in the area where they're currently assigned to Apex Friendship High School, but you're being proposed to go to Apex High School, because those schools are already in operation, already have student bodies, already have complete staff complements, we're recommending more generous stability transfer rules here. Any of those students would be eligible under the current recommendations to stay at Apex Friendship High School as long as they could provide transportation, because the bus service in this community would stop serving Apex Friendship High School and would start serving Apex High School. The nuance, and I'm going to take a moment of license here, Lewis, because we did have the question earlier about the academies. Mm-hmm. We've heard from a lot of families in this situation, right, where I'm being recommended to go to the new Felton Grove High School going, gosh, my current 9th grade student is in one of the academies. And we know that those academy seats can't necessarily be backfilled. So if I move on to 10th grade at Felton Grove, I can't necessarily find a 10th grader off the street to take over my seat because I'm progressing forward. So we've heard that from a lot of community members and family members, and we're working behind the scenes to assess whether or not we can make some adjustments to the stability rules to account for the students that are actively participating in and making good progress in those career academies. So that might be one thing that we might be able to adjust to support students that are in those very specific types of programs, because we know that those same programs won't be available at Felton Grove in the first year or so.
All right, thank you, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, this question has to do with, those who are not privy to the conversations and the tough conversations that happen at the board level. How much really do the opinions of families and community members have on the school assignment decision?
Oh, thank you for that question. And I realize at this stage in the process, it can feel like it doesn't have an impact, but hopefully what I just said about the stability rules shows that it does. As we hear feedback from communities about their specific situation or a nuance that we maybe couldn't, take into consideration during the initial draft planning, we do want to make those adjustments. But in reality, the really significant impact that your community has had has been on the conversations we had over the last couple of years leading up to the initial draft. Keep communities and neighborhoods together. We understand that assigning anybody from their current school to a different school is unsettling. That can't be understated. Yet we did hear very keenly, keep our whole community together if you possibly can. Don't split our neighborhood into two pieces. So we've really been trying to take that piece of feedback from families and community members into account. Think about transportation patterns. And I know for this particular community, there's a lot of concerns about heading sort of west across 540 and 55 and thinking about development that's happening, particularly in the town of Holly Springs and roadway construction. So we have been very mindful to think about those types of considerations as we're making final recommendations. And while we can't always make 100% wholesale adjustments based on that feedback, we can at least be mindful of these concerns and continue to have open conversations with our transportation department, as well as our safety and security team, as we're thinking about what these types of movements might look like for students. In addition, we're partnering very closely with town and municipal planners to make sure that we're fully aware of when roadway improvements will be complete, when residential developments will be coming online, so that we have a lot of, so we're using the information you gave us and those information information sessions to have those really detailed conversations with those planners, so we can make sure that although what we're doing may change something for a family or a community, or may make them kind of go, in a way that they'd rather not travel, go towards congestion instead of away from congestion, we can make sure we're partners in the process to try to make sure those improvements are coming quickly along to support families during that piece. Other ways that the feedback has been used is the stability rules. I've been in this particular role since 22, and during that time, our stability rules have become more and more and more generous to support stability for families and stability for schools. What I glossed over a little bit is that the board policy on stability only says that rising 5th, 8th, and 12th graders would have guaranteed stability transfers during an assignment change. So the fact that we've come up with ways to let all grades in particular recommendations have those stability transfers, and in other areas where we've said those younger siblings can come and stay all the way through 12th grade, or all the way through 8th, or all the way through 5th grade, depending on the level, those are all specific improvements and changes and adjustments to our planning process based on that community feedback. So we really do take that into consideration. Other examples, a couple of years ago, and maybe even this year, we'll get people through the thought exchange saying, hey, you moved this, but not this, or this seems to be illogical. We will evaluate every single one of those point outs to us, those concerns, those suggestions. And in some cases, they do result in adjustments to the plan. One, we didn't align a feeder pattern, and we got that taken care of during a second review of a plan. This year, we might have similar things happening as well. So the feedback is very, very important. We can't necessarily make wholesale 100% changes, but we definitely take the feedback into consideration and share it with the board, and the board weighs it very heavily in their decision-making and deliberation processes as well.
Thank you, Susan. So Susan, in general, how are certain neighborhoods or zoning lines, as the language was used, how do we use that to determine what neighborhoods go to what schools and how we make decisions? And is there data that the public can see to understand why these attendance lines are drawn the way they are?
Some yes, some no. So yeah, okay. It's mostly yes. In our district, we have a history of taking the entire Wake County public school system. So just as a friendly reminder, we are a Wake County public school system that the jurisdiction is the entire county. So we are not a municipal system. Each of the municipalities, while they're wonderful partners with the district, they're not responsible for building schools. They don't fund schools in any specific way. I mean, they do help with SROs. They help sometimes with sidewalk improvements. They're obviously amazing partners when it comes to volunteerism and that sort of thing, but they don't have any sort of direct financial responsibilities in terms of capital funding, construction, that sort of thing for schools, for the school district. So we are a county-based system, and our job is to take our currently 199, soon to be 203 schools, and fill them up to an operational efficiency level so that we can, offer good academic programming. We can make sure that, you saw in the video, we're trying to avoid having lunch during the breakfast hour. We're trying to avoid really long lines in restrooms and carpool. We're trying to make sure that our buses are as full as possible when they're picking up students and dropping them off at school, so we get those high efficiency ratings. So all of those things have to be factored in. So the lines that we use to draw attendance area, we take that entire district and we break it up into little pieces that once upon a time were called nodes. It's a little bit different now. We refer to them as plan units or catchments. And what those are is just a polygon that takes whole neighborhoods, or takes large neighborhoods maybe, and breaks them into two pieces depending on the total number of students. And it gives us some boundaries that we can use not only to route our transportation into and out of these neighborhoods, but also to sort of craft these lines. Some of them align with census block lines, but not all of them do. It's a process that's been iterative over the last 20, 30 years. So we use those to help us out. Some of the data we can't share with you because it's personally identifiable for students, because we do use some high-level GIS geocoding softwares that can help us, but we can't share that with the public because students are identifiable in that data with a lot of beyond directory information. So it's for confidentiality and to support student safety and security. There's some of that data we can't share with the public, but we can share with you how we take the projected forecast. I'm going to, before I make you dizzy by flipping through a million screens. If you weren't with us as we opened the session, We do an enrollment forecast in partnership with all of the municipal planners throughout the state. And that report is published and shared on our website at the assignment planning website. So you're more than welcome to go to our assignment planning website and click the link to the forecast. All that data is readily available so you can see how those projections were made. And then we take those projections and we distribute them throughout the county. So it's not just a total number, but it lets us know where the students are growing. So the way you would read this particular map is that the blue colored arrows that are pointing in an upward direction represent areas where we're projecting growth over the next 10 years in student enrollment in Wake County Public Schools, not as a region, but in Wake County Public Schools enrollment. So that's taking into account the impact of charter and homeschool private schools, that sort of thing in the region. If there's a red or downward facing arrow, that lets you know an area where we're projected to see a decrease in total student enrollment. So this might be an area that's gentrifying. This might be an area where there's being some demolition and there's going to be a different type of use of the land space. You'll notice that for our district, most of the downward pointing red arrows are complemented by an equally sized upward pointing blue arrow. So for us, that basically just means stable enrollment in that region. So while one neighborhood might be getting a little smaller, another one might be getting a little bit bigger. But as you can see in this area, most of them are upward pointing red arrows with no complementary downward pointing red arrow. So this lets us know where the projected growth is coming. And so we use this along with what we know about the residential development from the municipal planners, the feedback we've received from the community about trying to make sure that neighborhoods stay together. We look at transportation networks, and we use all of that together to come up with ultimately what you see as an assignment recommendation for each school. It's a very long answer. And if you're interested in that discussion, I really encourage you to visit our assignment planning website. We have some video resources that talk through this process in greater detail, as well as links to every single bit of data that we use that we can share that is publicly available because it's not confidential student information. We do share all of that on that site as well.
Thank you, Susan. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome our Wake County Public students that I was told have joined the meeting.
Oh, wonderful.
We're honored to have you here, and you're the reason why we're doing this. So happy that you can join us. Susan, with respect to Felton Grove High School being close to Cary, why are the Cary communities not being affected by these shifts? We feel like the communities in Apex and Holly Springs have had multiple reassignments, while Cary has gone unaffected.
And I think the answer to that goes back to what I showed you before. In fact, I will, I really am not trying to make y'all dizzy. I just want to make sure we have visuals to go with the discussion. So as we mentioned earlier, when we do the enrollment forecast, it also helps us look at what the projected crowding is for future school years. And as you'll notice, this portion of the county has the highest level of crowding. The darker red or orange, the more well over 100% the school is projected to be crowded. Specifically, I'm trying to look at my legend. I want to say it's over 110% for those. So you can see that the absolute most crowded schools in the district are in this portion of the county. If you see the yellows, that means those schools are actually kind of where we want them. They're in that 95 to 100% crowding range. So reducing the enrollments of those schools doesn't help us with our operational efficiency goals. It would make those schools significantly under enrolled. So the reason that we've had to work in this area to reduce crowding is because this is where the highest rate of growth has been over the last several years. We do feel confident that with the opening of Felton Grove, we're going to make a significant impact to the crowding in all of these schools and be able to have some stability, as I mentioned, through probably the 2033-34 school year, unless development patterns change and it starts to kick off and get even faster, right? So that's always the piece where we're being really good partners with our municipal planners to make sure we're totally prepared for growth that's coming. But in this case, this is the region that has the most significant crowding. And so we needed to relieve that crowding. And that's why this area is being impacted the most. The Cary area, Athens, Middle Creek, those kinds of schools that are somewhat nearby, they're not experiencing anywhere near the level of crowding. In fact, they're operating kind of where we'd like for them to be. So reducing the enrollments at those schools would not make operational efficiency sense from a staff planning perspective.
Thank you, Susan. So Susan, question about the thought exchange. It seems that all the information from all of the school changes that are proposed to happen are all grouped together and they're not really separated. where feedback could be more useful if they were separated and grouped so that the board had the opportunity to read this and actually go through individual assignment decisions that are being made. So how is the thought exchange organized? Are we able to see these, see the feedback broken up into the specific regions or assignments that are happening?
We anticipated this type of a concern based on feedback we received in previous years. And so you'll notice when you're entering into the thought exchange, you're being asked to identify what region of the county that you identify with. Do you consider yourself Apex Holly Springs, or do you consider yourself Northeast and maybe a Wake Forest or Roseville type family? And so having that question at the front, when we get the results, we can analyze those and see how families are, who ranked that particular choice, how they're rating thoughts in the thought exchange. The reason that we wanted to make sure that there was a global perspective is because at this stage, in the initial draft in particular, the entire county does need to weigh in, taxpayers and so forth they're weighing in. We need to have opinions from everybody, and we think that it's important for everyone to see each other's thoughts and ideas and be able to rate them versus sequester them and not be able to see them at all. But yes, on the back side, using some of the AI analytics that are built into the tool for us as staff, we can parse those out. Separately, when you're in the thought exchange itself and you're just reviewing the thoughts, you can do some keyword searches. So our board members are absolutely able to maybe just type in Felton Grove and see all the thoughts that are kind of coming up about Felton Grove and see how those are being rated. So there are ways that we can do a little bit of both and we're trying to do that this year in response to similar feedback from previous years. By having that survey question at the beginning, it really helps us when needed to disaggregate the information, but also allows for all the information to be commingled as well. So we get a little bit of best of both worlds.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. We have many more questions to get to. I'd like to do one more for the planning and process of assignment, and then we'll get to some of our safety and transportation questions, as we do have some energy around there. But Susan, currently, are there any plans to adding, any plans or any chance of adding more assignment areas to the Holly Springs High School area? For example, Sunset Ridge North, which is north of Holly Springs Road and west of Sunset Lake Road.
Oh, so taking areas that are currently projected to remain assigned to Holly Springs and perhaps have them go to Felton Grove instead?
Correct.
Okay. We have actually, I have seen that feedback quite a lot throughout the thought exchange, that there's a community, specifically the one I've seen the most comments from is Sunset Ridge. There's a north and a south portion, and it looks like the north portion is currently included in the recommendations for Felton Grove, but the south isn't. So things like that, yes, we're absolutely assessing and evaluating to determine if a proposed adjustment should come in to support maybe having a more proximate school assignment or keeping a community together. So the short answer is it's being assessed and evaluated. The long answer is come to October 15th and see, tune in on October 15th to see where we are with that recommendation or if there's any adjustments that are being proposed as a result of that. But yes, that feedback is very helpful in helping us assess whether or not adjustments should be recommended.
Thank you, Susan. And just a quick general student assignment enrollment question. This is a question about the enrollment process for 8th grade students that are not currently enrolled in Wake County. What do they do to be part or be a 9th grader, a rising 9th grader next year in Wake County Public Schools?
Okay. So this is for any grade level in particular, but we can talk specifically about the 8th grader. Usually around mid-October, I'm going to ballpark it. I think it's October 14th. Lewis, you can correct me if I said that wrong, but somewhere around October 14th or 15th, we open up pre-registration or pre-enrollment for the next school year. So I'm thinking of my family where I have maybe my younger student is not in a Wake County public school, but my older student is attending one of the high schools that's impacted, and I want them to be eligible for that stability transfer. And that's kind of what I'm putting together here with maybe this question. Yes, you can put in that pre-registration paperwork as early as October. Don't quote me. It's whatever that date is in mid-October. It'll be on our website. You can find that quickly. You'll go to the base assigned school, get the student pre-registered, get a student ID number, get everything active and pre-registered. That way, when we go to November and we get the final approval from the board, your student's in there, they're attached to your older student, and we'll know to send you the notification so that you can do the stability request. If you're simply asking in general about how to get students registered, because maybe you want to do a magnet application or an early college application, same rules still apply. Mid-October, go to the base school, get pre-registered. They'll give you your student ID number once everything's all set up. And then you can use that to go into our application processes if you're interested in a magnet or an early college application as well. So all of that is the same.
Thank you, Susan. It's 7:19 now. I'd like to transition to some safety and transportation questions.
Certainly.
Susan, are we taking into account bus, car routes to and from the assigned schools? At the moment, we do not have to cross 55, which has a lot of heavy traffic to get to school.
Yes, we did review all of the recommendations with our transportation department, and they are currently assessing everything. The initial review before the recommendations were released was that it was doable, that it would actually probably be an improvement, with the exception of having to send students in two separate directions. But in general, for our transportation department, they have let us know that as long as the students from this neighborhood are all going to the same school, and the distance is relatively equal, that it is something that they can manage safely. We do know that they're looking particularly in this area about the impacts of the opening of 540 and how that might impact transportation routes. And of course, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if the person who wrote the question heard my response about us partnering with our municipal planners in like the town of Holly Springs and town of Apex to make sure that they're aware of these same concerns so that they can share with us any information that they can about what's going on with roadway improvements. So we are looking to have a more robust response to this very specific question as we get closer to that October 15th presentation. But I do know that we've had some partner conversations already where everyone's aware that traffic patterns will change a little bit for the students that are currently in the proposal to go to Felton Grove, and everyone's making steps to be prepared for those types of transportation changes. We hear very clearly that there are concerns about heading east, about the way that the Holly Springs roadway network is set up with the U-turns for the left turns. We recognize that's just how that roadway is designed and developed. And so anybody who's traveling on that road will have to make those U-turns. But we do hear that concern about maybe young drivers having to travel these paths. So we are partnering with everyone that we can to best understand those concerns to determine whether or not any recommended adjustments should be made.
All right. Thank you, Susan. And there's also a question, Susan, about, current roadways and what the pathways are now. Do you know of any current plans for future road work, lights, or modifying traffic patterns that are in the works to improve that route to Felton Grove High School?
I'm going to get them wrong if I try to do them off the top of my head, but I think that's an amazing question, and I'll make sure we get some details on the FAQ with that response. But yes, we do have some communications with our town partners that are letting us know what's going on with improvements in the area, but we'll get some really prescriptive responses to that question. So I don't want to speak incorrectly to that one, but yes, we are aware that there are improvements that are being made, but I'll get those details and we'll get them updated to the website.
All right, thank you, Susan. So Susan, it appears from what's available now to the public that there will be two entrances, or maybe an entrance and an exit to the proposed Felton Grove entrance from Stevenson Road. What is the plan for the mobile home community that currently exists there between the school and Stevenson Road? Do we have any information about that?
I don't want to speak out of turn. Similar to the last question, it's my understanding that at this point, those houses are continuing to stay. The district did not purchase that land, is my understanding. And so we would just be partnering with that development to help make sure that the roads are improved in that area so that the access points into and out of the school are as least bothersome to the residents as possible. But yes, that it's my understanding that the development at the moment it will remain in place, that we didn't purchase that property. Nothing's set for demolition or anything like that at this time. But I'll add that to my list of making sure we have specific responses. In addition, if you are interested in attending the in-person session on September 24th, we will have staff from our facilities team present who can answer some of these site-based questions with much better details than I can. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in that type of information, that maybe try to make plans to attend. And again, it's an open house format. So there's not a start time, or there's a start time and an end time in terms of when you can come and when we're going to close the doors, but we're not doing any formal presentation. So you can kind of float from station to station when you get there. So come when you're available anytime between 6 and 8 p.m. and that staff will be available to answer questions like that personally. But in addition, we'll work on getting those posted to our website as well.
Okay, Susan, would you mind reminding us, when will the details on courses such as AP, electives, clubs, sports, the ability for varsity sports, extracurricular activities, as well as the daily structure of the school, when will that information be available for families to access?
I think a three-part answer to this one. One is a lot of that will be driven by student interest, right? So as the students start doing the pre-registration process in the early spring next year, that will start to let the new principal who's hired and the new staff that's hired know what types of courses the students are most interested in taking and what types of classes to make sure that they offer. So if there's not a lot of interest in French, but there's interest in Spanish, these are probably terrible examples I'm thinking of when I was in high school, then maybe we offer Spanish instead of French. When it comes to the extracurriculars, again, largely going to be driven by student interest. So, and you know, teachers. So as the teachers are hired and coming in and bringing in their interest, and the students are coming in saying, hey, they're going to have some foundational pieces. Of course, you'll have an honor society, you'll have a student council, those sorts of things. But if there's an interest in an environmental club or a robotics club, a lot of that is going to be student interest driven, just like it is in all of our schools today. So there'll be some foundational pieces that'll obviously be in place, but then the rest will be largely based on what the community decides it wants to build right there at Felton Grove High School. So that, to me, as a student who moved a lot during high school, I think about that and I go, that'd be really cool to be on the ground floor to say, this is what we want our school to be, and this is what we want to be known for. And these are the kinds of clubs. So that's a cool thing that these 9th and 10th graders will be able to start setting the foundation for the school with. As far as sports, it's my understanding that all sports that we offer as a district at the high school level will be available at the varsity level, with the exception of football or tackle football. So varsity sports will be available at all level. Whether or not they offer JV of those different sports will be based on student interest. So if there's enough student interest to field 2 teams in, let's say, basketball, then you might have a varsity squad as well as a JV squad. For football, just because of the nature of it only being 9th and 10th grade students, tackle football will start with a JV program and then immediately transition to a varsity program that second year of operation of the school. So that'll be a great time for those students who are in the 9th and 10th grade to really build a strong foundation for that JV program, those leadership skills, and then get prepared for that first level of varsity competition in the following year. Again, Darren Coe, as well as other staff members from our athletics department, will be available at that September 24 session. So if you have very specific questions that you want to ask about individual sports, you're certainly welcome to attend there. In addition, this question, I believe we've already got answered on our FAQ from the spring information session that we had with families. So I would encourage you to continue to look at the Felton Grove specific FAQs, and we'll continue to update those just in case some of these questions that you're asking tonight weren't already addressed.
All right, thank you, Susan. I think we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I'd like to circle back to some assignment questions.
Sure.
Susan, it looks like elementary schools, when looking at the projections, will have the most growth. What's the plan to prepare for the eventual growth that will happen for the middle schools when those students graduate from elementary and matriculate forward?
Great question. There's a little bit of nuance between the elementary growth and the middle school growth. Just as a friendly reminder for those of you who might not have been plugged into this part of the planning discussion, our elementary schools are really restricted because of class size legislation. So our kindergarten students, their class sizes are capped at 18, or the class size limit is 18. First grade at 16, second and third grade at 17. There's not at the moment a class size limit for 4th and 5th grade, but as a district, we try to keep them in that 24 to 26 range whenever possible. I recognize many of you have students at some of our area capped elementary schools, and those numbers can get a little bit higher than that as we're addressing the growth that's coming into that part of the county. So because of that, our elementary schools do tend to fill much more quickly than our middle schools and high schools, because our middle schools and high schools aren't beholden to such small class size ratios. We still want to have good class size ratios. We want to be in that 24 to 26 range at the middle school and high school, but we're not limited by that class size law. So what you'll see is that sometimes what looks like a whole bunch of really, really full elementary schools can actually adequately fit in the existing middle schools that we have. I do know that we have land in our bank for another middle school near Woods Creek Elementary. So if the need arises, that one could potentially be added to a future capital improvement plan. It's not currently in the next 7 years, but there is land there. So we are continuously monitoring the impact on our middle schools to determine when and if it's a good time to recommend to our facilities team that they consider adding a middle school to the to the complement of schools in the region. Right now, we feel like we're okay with the complement that we have. We might need to make some adjustments. You may be familiar with Holly Grove and Holly Ridge. They still have some space for growth. Fuquay Arena Middle just moved into its new building, so we've got some space there. Lufkin's starting to fill up because of the growth in the Woods Creek base, but there's still some capacity there. Obviously, Apex Friendship Middle is capped and overflowing students to Apex Middle. So yes, we do want to make sure we're mindful of what that elementary growth will do. It's just not as directly impactful as at the elementary level because those class size limits are in play. But yes, we are monitoring it. We do have some land in the area should we need it, and we'll continue to monitor that over time.
Thank you, Susan. At this time, it's just about 7:30, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming. Thank you for staying with us on this Tuesday evening. We will be doing a deeper dive with respect to Felton Grove High School on September 24th at Herbert Akins Road Middle School. So we ask you to come out and join us, and we can get into more school-related questions when we see you there. So we hope this session has been informative. We hope that you have a better understanding about the recommendations included in the initial draft of the plan. And separately, we really appreciate your open and honest participation. It really does help us drive the work that we try to do. And love to see that the students were out here tonight. Thank you, students, for coming out. Once again, you're the reason why we're here. And folks, your input and feedback is vital to the refinement of this enrollment plan. And please remember, we will present a summary of the feedback received and any recommended adjustments to the proposal to the board on October 15th, with a final vote expected, as Ms. Pulliam said, on November 26th. The thought exchange, once again, will remain open until September 29th, and we encourage you to continue to post your comments, rate your comments, and please explore the exchange. Again, we just want to take this opportunity to thank you, and please enjoy the remainder of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Lewis, for navigating it for us. Good night, everyone.